It probably did not escape your attention that I did not cover PFP and other art NFTs during this market cycle. There was a reason for that. I actually like a lot of the art, but that's not why a huge number of people were buying those non-fungible tokens. There were, of course, exceptions, but for a giant group of people, it was to this cycle what ICOs were to the last, an example of number go up phenomenon. You could buy them and flip them, or hodl them and dream of that really huge payday. The potency of this was only elevated by the gambling lottery elements allowed by non-fungibility and scarcity of elite rarities. I'll never forget my friends in the last cycle buying into ridiculous ICOs with nonsense business models simply because that number might go up. This market cycle seems to be coming full circle finally now, and it's probably time we start looking at non-fungible tokens in terms of their actual utility. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss the recently reported mind-blowing squandering of assets by 3AC on art NFTs, Muesliswap's launch of a utility NFT, the US CPI number at a 40-year high, and Jimmy Song taking another ratio beating, but this time from a different digital animal. If you're a hardcore off-gridder who doesn't even remember what utility lines are for, or an ardent city dweller who couldn't come up with a single calorie of food if the stores and restaurants ever all closed, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to see if we can have a monthly sponsor of these videos. So if you're a Cardano project that would be interested in this, you've got to be in Cardano. But if you're a Cardano project that would be interested in being a monthly sponsor of the videos on this channel, please hit me up at Army Spies on Twitter. Just at Army Spies on Twitter. Just send me a message over there. This won't change my coverage. There will just be a sponsor of each video on a monthly basis. And there will be criteria, not just any project can do this, but if you're a project out there that's interested, hit me up on Twitter. Let's be clear about something right from the start. I understand that some of you are really in it for the art. Some of you just love art and you really appreciate the talents of the artist and you want to support those talented artists, and that's why you're actually buying NFTs. There are also others of you who love to collect things. You might have rooms full of collectibles from your favorite media franchises. I know you exist. However, you're probably in the minority, and there's something else going on here. There's another reason why people are buying these NFTs. I think this thread that popped up on Reddit today is a great example of this. This thread is titled 3AC borrowed millions from Voyager and BlockFi user deposits and bought NFTs. And they go on to detail these many different NFT purchases by 3AC. I don't know if any of this is true, but it may be true. And they even outline some of the more ridiculous purchases by 3AC. The thread reports that 3AC purchased this NFT for 800 Ether, which at the time apparently was over $2 million USD, and even now is worth almost $900,000. I can't imagine how this type of decision-making could have possibly led them wrong. Also reported is that they spent $130,000 US on this NFT. I think the interesting thing here, though, I mean, some people will like this art. Some people will actually like this. But I think the interesting thing here is that a company as central to crypto, or at least as central to the EVM world, we can say, as 3AC, or playing as big a role in the EVM world and larger crypto space as 3AC, was willing to drop six figures on this kind of NFT and not be worried about the repercussions. It would be simpler, but I don't think we can really chalk this up to complete irrationality, because when people, especially institutions, were buying art like this for six figures or that other abstract piece for 2 million, they weren't really buying art. That's not really what was going on here. They were buying a placeholder for growth in the NFT market. I don't think they were looking at this and thinking about the artistic genius of the artist or commentary on society or anything like that. It was just a token that represented a certain potential growth that could be captured based on the bullishness of the NFT markets. It was kind of a proxy in a way for the entire crypto space. This was an expression of the exuberance of the entire crypto space, how much confidence we all had in crypto becoming a more and more mainstream thing as we go along the timeline. This was a proxy for the growth of crypto, and the number just kept going up, even with a piece of art like this, which is going to appeal to some people, but will have a pretty limited audience. There will be a somewhat limited audience for a piece of art like this. And even that other abstract piece, even though there's nothing, particularly controversial about that other abstract piece, at that price point, $2 million, it also pretty limited audience. Only a certain number of people in the world who are willing to look at that piece of art and consider it at $2 million. But for 3AC or anybody buying these types of art NFTs during this bull market, they weren't really buying the art. They were buying a piece of this crypto gold rush that they all thought either wouldn't end or that they could enter and exit quickly enough that they didn't have to worry about the repercussions of it ending. Basically, it didn't really matter that these tokens represented art. It was very convenient from a regulatory point of view, since financial regulators are a little bit hesitant to come in and regulate something that's being labeled as art and certainly does contain art. But these transactions were not really about art. These could have been anything. There could have been no art attached to these. The thing that people were buying and selling, what they were trading, was just an asset. It could have been anything, but as long as it was in a very, very fast growing market, which this certainly was during the very bullish days, people were going to speculate heavily in that market and with a lot of leverage, because we know from human history, that's what humans always do. Whenever there's a very, very fast advancing market, they will always speculate as hard as they can with as much leverage as they possibly can. By the way, credit to Jarek of Maladex for bringing attention to the thread about these transactions. So if these were just chips on the poker table, what happens when somehow all the chips instantly become devalued? What happens next in that case is probably nothing for actual art lovers, but for everybody else, it's probably a return to evaluation of real world utility, because it turns out NFTs are good for more than just looking pretty. If you were following this channel last year, you'll remember that I talked quite a bit about what I called functional NFTs. This was the idea that there would be NFTs that would serve a function to the user beyond just the aesthetics of any art that was involved. And there weren't really any in the Cardano ecosystem yet when I was talking about it last year. Now we do have them. We tend to say that they're NFTs with utility, and we have a couple different categories of them. The first group are NFTs that are sort of by purpose tied to a utility. I would put metaverse NFTs, like parcel NFTs, into this category. Obviously, you're buying that NFT, and along with that ownership, you control certain things about whatever parcel it is in whatever metaverse. Like you're the only one who can build buildings on that parcel often, or you're the only one who can decide, what type of building is going to go on it. Those kind of things. You can display, other NFTs on the parcel map, all those kind of things. There are actual things you can do with the NFT that you can't do if you don't own that NFT. We also have a lot of the NFTs that were previously just PFPs or other types of art NFT, and we find them now sort of pivoting and trying to create utility around the ownership of that NFT, which was previously, maybe just about art. In a lot of cases, it's sort of, maybe the drop of a fungible token. Everyone holding those NFTs gets some kind of fungible token, and while you could debate whether or not that's actual utility, I guess it depends on the degree of value of those tokens that are being dropped. And then you've got some other previously art only NFTs that are finding other ways to create utility for the users. In some cases, the PFP NFT is being transformed into an avatar that might function in a metaverse. And you notice lately that some of the Cardano metaverse projects, like Virtua, for instance, they're talking about how all of their NFTs that they're going to be creating related to their metaverse, related to Virtua Prime, are 3D rigged. So, according to some of the recent AMAs, it sounds like all of their NFTs are already being created so that they can serve as 3D avatars in the metaverse. Another emerging category of NFTs with utility is around projects like DeFi platforms issuing NFTs that will serve some role in their platform. In the case of these DeFi projects, the ones we've seen so far issuing these NFTs, it's usually some kind of like boost to yield. I'm sure they're going to come up with all kinds of various uses for various types of NFTs inside their platforms. But so far, we've seen a lot of NFTs that boost yield. We've seen Liquid do this and have a very successful sell of their Aqua Farmers NFTs. And now we see Muesliswap issuing these Hungry Cow NFTs. Muesliswap says, in the anticipation of our hybrid DEX launch at the end of the month, we are proud to announce our very own NFT collection called Hungry Cows. They tell you there will be, it looks like, 2 phases. In phase 1, they will be dropping 2,500 Hungry Cows. It looks like there is a snapshot happening on the 17th of July at 5 p.m. UTC. And you must have staked at least 1 milk token in any milk pool, past or present. If you've done that, then you will be included in the snapshot on the 17th at 5 p.m. UTC. And then you'll be allowed to participate in phase 1. And here they have some pricing information and other things. Looks like the mint will happen on the 18th of July, the very next day, again at 5 p.m. UTC. And then in phase 2, they're going to sell off the remaining 7,500 Hungry Cow NFTs. There will be no whitelist. This drop will be open to everyone. And then they get down to utility. And again, this is going to be a utility in terms of a yield boost. Hungry Cows can be locked with your yield farming positions on Muesliswap. Each Hungry Cow has a unique boosting factor between 10% and 90%. That means your yield farming rewards will be boosted by up to 90% by locking your Hungry Cow NFT. The boosting factor can only be applied to 1 yield farming position, which is also why there are no limitations on how many you can mint. This is a pretty wide margin. There's a very big difference between a 10% boost and a 90% boost. And, just like with a lot of NFT mints, that's going to result in a very wide spectrum of secondary market prices. This larger spread between the lowest boost and the highest boost, of course, just adds to that whole gambling lottery element to a lot of these NFT mints. Because, of course, everybody's going to buy hoping they get that 90% boost. But some people are going to get that 10% boost, and they are not going to be as stoked as the people who got the 90% boost. I really wish this was a boost on the milk pool staking and not the yield farming. But of course, what they're trying to stimulate here is yield farming in the DEX. They also mentioned that there will be a 5% trading royalty on these NFTs, and 100% of these royalties will go to the Muesliswap community treasury. Regulatory treatment of these kinds of NFTs that have some DeFi utility is kind of interesting right now, because it seems like what we tend to see in language like proposed bill language or proposed regulatory language or just proposed policies, what we tend to see is some type of divvying up of responsibility for fungible tokens. It's usually like hey, we're going to give this category of fungible tokens to the SEC. We're going to give this category to the CFTC. That's the usual securities and commodities divide. And they often include some kind of a statement that's sort of like, we're not really going to do anything with NFTs. I think those kinds of distinctions, they seem very black and white right now between the fungible token world and the NFT world as far as federal regulation goes. But I think those lines are going to start becoming quite blurred once the policymakers realize that there are these NFTs that have utility inside DeFi projects as well. Speaking of financial NFTs, here are the US CPI measures of inflation for June 2022. This was all over the news today. You probably saw it. And the number you probably saw was just this one, the all items CPI measure of inflation, which is 9.1%. But we have other CPI measures for June. We have food at 10.4%, energy at 41.6%, and everybody's favorite statistical trick, measure everything but food and energy and call it 5.9%. Sounds a lot better than 9.1, 10.4, or 41.6, which all sound terrible. In fact, I think at this point, the only way USD would be competitive for me as a consumer, competitive with crypto, would be if the Fed came around and just sort of offered me a special yield boosting NFT. I could just like drop in my savings account or my checking account, and I would get this yield, this magical yield like you do in crypto, where it just like suddenly matches inflation. That's what would make USD competitive with crypto for me. US Fed, if you're listening, Jerome Powell, please send me that NFT. The Bitcoin maximalists seem to continue digging themselves into deeper and deeper holes. At first, it seemed like they were really hung up on the proof of work versus proof of stake thing, which was kind of confusing. I chalk this up to them finding themselves in a bear market, being in a bad economic environment. And of course, what should you do in that case but lash out at proof of stake? Certainly, it's proof of stake's fault. So we saw a lot of discussion of proof of work and proof of stake as if those were the actual consensus protocols, and they made some gigantic difference in how consensus was actually reached. Of course, as we covered on this channel, a lot of people pointed out that those are not the actual consensus protocols. Those mechanisms, proof of work and proof of stake, just determine who gets to participate, who gets to validate the next block, things like that. The consensus protocol is what happens next. It's how you actually reach consensus about what should actually be in the block. Since that all got semi-cleared up, they seem to have moved on to this voting thing. Here we see Jimmy Song saying, proof of stake is the ultimate dog and pony show. You have to vote the way the centralized controllers want, or else you lose your money. It's got all the honesty of a 100% vote in a dictatorship. There are a lot of confusing things about this post, but I think what's going on here is that he's thinking purely of Ethereum 2.0, Ethereum proof of stake. He's making creating this false equivalence between all of proof of stake and the way Ethereum proof of stake is going to work, because Ethereum proof of stake has slashing. If he'd said something like, if you want to be sure you won't lose your assets, if you want 100% certainty or near 100% certainty you won't lose all your assets, you probably shouldn't be involved in Ethereum proof of stake, because Ethereum proof of stake has slashing, and in certain circumstances, your assets could be slashed. If he'd said that, I would have been like, okay, fair enough. That is, reasonable. But instead, he tries to paint with this very broad brush, making people believe that in all of proof of stake, you have to vote a certain way according to centralized controllers. That's a totally separate, very confusing part of his post. But you have to vote a certain way or else you lose your money. In Cardano, in all of my delegating and staking, all of my money stays on my ledger, and there's pretty much no way I'm going to lose my money unless somebody comes and steals my seed phrase or holds me at gunpoint and makes me put that pin into my ledger device. So there's no way I'm going to lose my money because of proof of stake. I think since Jimmy Song is a cowboy, I think cowboys should be focused on chewing tobacco, lever action rifles, gunfights with their cowboys, things like that. In fact, if he wrote posts, even fictional, completely fictional posts about gunfights with other cowboys, I would probably be happy to read those because it would probably be much better fiction than what he writes about crypto. Luckily, Jimmy was not content to get strongly ratioed by just one digital Cardano animal, but by two. Here we have Husky Token posting, "This comment is so stupid that even a pixelated dog should be able to ratio you." And sure enough, 488 likes compared to Jimmy's 339. Husky Token, I salute you. I hope everybody else is having a fantastic week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.